Ready. Just waiting for the slides. Brilliant. Good afternoon, Leila and Shaheen. Once again, we are Team Beacon, and the title of our presentation is When Words Move Markets, Predictive Insights from Bank of England Communications. The running order of speakers is myself, Victoria, Harshdeep, and Calvin. Herman is sharing the slides, and Kate will be taking notes. Next slide, please. The aspect of the brief that we're focusing on today is whether sentiment in Bank of England speeches can help predict economic indicators like consumer confidence and inflation. This is an important question because sentiment analysis is a time and resource intensive procedure, so it's essential to gain clarity with respect to the value it might add to the prediction of economic indicators. Aware of the limitations of the sentiment analysis dictionary provided to us, we tested more specific and sophisticated tools to determine which one is most effective. We then applied the results of our sentiment analysis to 3 different predictive models: a multiple linear regression to predict consumer confidence, a gradient boosting regression to predict inflation, and a time series model that also predicts inflation. We'll conclude the presentation by suggesting some next steps for the Bank of England that are inspired by our analysis. And I'll now turn it over to Victoria so she can explain the advantages of the sentiment analysis method that we selected.
Thank you, Chris. We started with testing against a random sample of 59 speeches manually labeled positive, negative, neutral. Based on our last conversation with the Bank of England, we've now added generative LLMs, ChatGPT and Claude. Central Bank Roberta and ChatGPT outperformed the other models, with ChatGPT having slight edge. We looked further into these top 2 models to see what is driving the difference in performance. We found the divergence comes from a slight negative bias of Central Bank Roberta. But when looking at the continuous scores over time, each model captures major peaks and dips in sentiment. Next slide, please. We use Central Bank Roberta as our model of choice because it is specifically trained on communications from such institutions as BIS, ECB, and the Fed, making it highly suited to this domain. There are practical benefits over LLMs such as ChatGPT. CB Roberta is free, consistent, reproducible, not at the mercy of changing models or API structures. It also provides a second dimension by estimating agent-specific sentiment. As shown in the chart, Central Bank Roberta breaks down sentiment into 5 types of economic agents. Next slide, please. Looking at each group separately helps avoid situations where their sentiments offset each other. In the chart in golden, we highlight the example of a period when different agent sentiments moved in opposite directions. This approach gives clearer picture of how sentiment may relate to economic indicators. It is especially useful because these indicators are also affected by many macroeconomic events shown on the chart in gray. So separating each group's view adds precision to the predictive analysis. Next slide, please. The analysis shows that the sentiment expressed by the central bank, combined with key indicators like unemployment and inflation expectations, can help predict economic indicators. This combination has 78% explanatory power for movements in the JFK Consumer Confidence Index. It highlights how the policy tone and economic signals together can help shape the economy. Next slide, please. Inflation metrics and the Central Bank Roberta sentiment score showed strong correlations. To avoid overlap between variables, we kept just the inflation measure. We chose to exclude CPI, as inflation expectations were more closely tied to JFK and better reflect future outlook. Next slide, please. Using historical volatility data, we tested the model against various volatility scenarios. The test showed clearly that neutral volatility periods have a more predictable structure. During crisis periods, consumer sentiment can shift abruptly due to shocks not captured by the features. Next slide, please. Although economic indicators seem more important than sentiment within the scope of predictive analysis, communications do matter as a forward guidance. It is also suggested to prioritize timing of key speeches through introduction of appropriate time lags, to switch to more complex models like XGBoost to explore nonlinear effects, or SariMax to use autoregression and capture shifts in short-term timeframes. And now moving on to Harsh.
Our analysis goes beyond simple trends. It shows the true impact of speech sentiment is often delayed. Our gradient boosting regression model confirmed that various aspects of speeches are significant predictors of future economic shifts, demonstrating sentiment's forward-looking role. This crucial insight means the bank's words just don't react to the economy, they actively help shape its future. For CPI rates, key sentiment predictors were how the bank spoke about households, with a 2-month delay having an importance of 0.012 and a 1-month delay having an importance of 0.07. These insights show the bank's tone on households significantly contributes to predicting future inflation. The model shows that past speech sentiment can indeed help explain and predict the direction of future economic indicators. Our model predicts inflation rates well, explaining 57% of its variation. Because financial markets strongly consider inflation, this forecasting ability gives market analysts valuable clues into its direction. Next slide, please. My recommendation is to establish a dedicated real-time sentiment monitoring dashboard within the bank. This system should track not only overall sentiment, but also granular sentiment towards key economic agents, for example, the financial sector and households, with a specific focus on incorporating the lagged sentiment indicators, for example, sentiment 1 to 3 months prior, that our model found as having significant predictive power. This provides a leading indicator for upcoming economic data releases. I will now pass on to Kelvin.
Thank you, Harsh. Thank you, Haman. We looked at SariMax, which is a time series model, to illustrate how Bank of England speech sentiment may be used for predictive modeling. Exogenous inputs were CPI lags, Central Bank Roberta sentiment scores for speeches between 2015 and 2024. We employed AutoArima to estimate the model parameters and in turn the optimal lag structure. We allowed for up to 6 lags of a dependent variable CPI rate. Next slide, please. Thank you, Herman. Economic agent sentiment matters. Using Central Bank Roberta economic agent sentiment scores, as opposed to the average score, improves the predictive performance on the test set. Notice the reduced mean absolute error as well as the increased R-squared. The green arrow points to how the forecast better tracks the test data. We do acknowledge, however, that the mean absolute error of 1.46 is quite high, given the goal of predicting future CPI rate. Our test set included the CPI peak of January 2023. Our model evidently struggled to cope with this period of high volatility. Contemporaneous sentiment, capturing the Bank of England's outlook, tone, and confidence, is a powerful coincident indicator. Its positive coefficient was statistically significant. When we included selected monthly macro indicators, lag by a month, lag CPI and inflation expectation were the strongest indicators. We believe that including longer lag macro indicators may mask the signal from speech sentiment. Crucially, the positive coefficient of central bank agent sentiment remains statistically significant. It's important to clarify that the Central Roberta model does not directly classify policy stances as hawkish or dovish. A positive central bank agent sentiment score simply reflects more confident or favorable self-referential language. The positive coefficient of central bank agent sentiment in both models implies that such confidence tends to appear during periods of elevated inflation, suggesting that the sentiment is acting as a contemporaneous signal of prevailing conditions, not a cause of inflation itself. Next slide, please. Now for some key recommendations. Use CPI lags and central bank Roberta central bank agent sentiment for operational forecasting. This captures both inertia, after all, inflation is sticky, and immediate narrative impact. And also treat communication as policy. Tone shapes expectations as much as actions. Even if our sentiment coefficient is positive, because central bank agent sentiment and CPI move in tandem, tone remains a vital part of a bank's toolkit for ultimately and preemptively reducing inflation. By anchoring expectations, preventing spirals, reinforcing credibility, and amplifying the punch of future rate moves, a resolute framing helps secure the path back to price stability long before the next interest rate announcement. Thank you. I'd like to hand over to Chris now.
Thanks, Kelvin. We'll conclude by reviewing 5 next steps for the Bank of England. First, if it's not doing so already, the bank should integrate speech sentiment into its predictive models. Central bank speeches influence expectations even without policy changes. Our findings support the bank's use of forward guidance and show that integrating speech sentiment into forecasting models adds real predictive value. Second, the bank should experiment with using contemporaneous and lagged features in predictive models. Both can have predictive power depending on the model, as demonstrated by the gradient boosting and time series analyses. Third, the bank should track perceived versus intended sentiment. There can be a gap between what the bank intends to communicate and how it's received. We recommend examining how the media and financial analysts report on speeches to better align messaging with public perception. Fourth, we propose creating a dashboard that tracks sentiment by audience, like households of the financial sector, alongside lagged economic trends. This helps the bank plan and tailor communications for greater strategic impact. Finally, tracking intraday moves in the FTSE 250, gilts, and sterling can offer immediate feedback on how speeches affect markets, especially when delivered during trading hours. This adds a real-time feedback loop to refine future messaging. By taking these steps, the Bank of England will be in an even better position to fulfill its mandate of promoting economic stability. Next slide, please. Thanks again for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have for us.
I can go first. I thought that was really good, a lot more understandable and nice paced, I think. My one question would be, if you go back to the last slide where you were saying building like a dashboard to sort of track sentiment monitoring, yeah. So obviously there's a way to do that for like things like CPI, but in terms of like business sentiment and household sentiment, what kind of things would you, what data sources or what would you be measuring to track that actual sentiment?
I think we were thinking about mortgage rates, speaking about households. Obviously, our research was directed by obtaining measurable and expected results. So it didn't lead us there yet, but it's something we're looking forward to test whenever we have the chance. Thank you for the question, Leila.
I can add to that, Leila. We used a House of Commons library report on different economic indicators that it publishes monthly. And one of the consumer confidence indicators in that document was the GfK consumer confidence that was part of Herman's model that we first presented, the multiple linear regression model. And we've also used city YouGov surveys that also track some of this information as well. Thank you.
Okay, so it was a very well presented and polished project, and thank you for the presentation. I don't have that much thing to add. Maybe the time series forecasting maybe you will get different result if you. It seems that you haven't used a cross validation for training your models, or have you, for the time series?
No, I haven't. I've used
Okay.
AutoArima to come up with the parameters, but not
Okay. Maybe it's possible to get a better. And also, one again out of box question to know your opinion. So let's assume that how do we know that the way that our models, language models, are perceiving the speeches is comparable to how people perceive these speeches? Okay, so let's say that right now we are assuming that the sentiment that is returned by the model is closely related or identical to the sentiment perceived by households, let's say, okay, or markets. Can you come up with a validation method of this assumption?
I can take an attempt to answer this, Shaheen. So, and this is something that I would love to do if we, had another few weeks for this project. But I know there are tools to do sentiment analysis on other texts, right, such as news reports or a financial analyst report. So if we were able to, find reports that are looking at and reflecting on specific speeches, we could run the same sentiment analysis tools on the reports to then see if it's getting a similar score, and that could be a way to validate that. Thanks.
Victoria also wants to add something.
It's much of a thank you for the question. I was also thinking about it, especially when we were going over the speeches by ourselves. I was curious whether, sorry for answering with a question, but I was curious whether it's possible to have dedicated groups of specialists manually labeling and creating the libraries to train semantics to test accuracy. Just a fantasy, haven't researched that, but curious to know.
Yeah, I mean, both are valid points. To me, I mean, I was thinking about what would be the association between like sentiment analysis on Twitter data related to, let's say, to speeches and the sentiments coming from speeches, or between, because when the bank announces something or publishes something and it will get covered in media, we will see reports and articles here and there, right? So maybe sentiment analysis of them also, because people do not sit and read the reports of the Bank of England, but they will sit and read something on Telegraph, let's say, or I don't know, Guardian. So maybe those are the intermediary ones are more important. These are just ideas. Yeah, please.
Definitely see eye to eye. We have experience analyzing Twitter comments. We struggled with sarcasm a lot. So what you outlined, like Telegraph, more associated with professional sentiment, makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation and for the great job that you have done.
Amazing. Well done, team. Congratulations on your final pitch and all your hard work. Thank you very, very much. It was absolutely awesome to be able to watch it live. Thank you to Shaheen and Leila for your feedback. I'll see you guys in the next session. But yeah, well done, team. So yeah, please celebrate your success and go and relax your shoulders and try and figure out what you're going to be doing with all that 20+ hours per week now. I'll be in touch with you guys soon. Take care. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leila. Thanks, Shaheen. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.